thing too.
Okay, so we're live on YouTube now. So if everyone will call the special council meeting to order for April 22nd, 2020. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and we will call the meeting to order and move right on to item 2, approval of today's agenda. Of course, the recommendation is that the special council meeting of April 22nd, 2020 be approved as presented. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Ostrander. I think I saw a seconder, Councillor McConnell. Any further discussion on the agenda today? Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, everyone. Motion's passed. So item 3, declarations of interest. Anyone have any declarations today? Seeing no. So item 4, that's the minutes of our previous council meetings. We do have 4.1, that special council meeting from April 8, 2020. And of course, the recommendation is that those minutes dated April 8, 2020 be accepted as presented. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Jansman, seconded by, I think I saw Councillor Young. Any further discussion on that set of minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question then. All in favor?
Okay.
Okay, motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. And moving on to the items for today, we have under item 5 a few staff reports. First up, 5.1's the staff report 23-2020. That's a financial report for March. I asked Matthew to put together a little snapshot for us of our current position and try to get a good overall view of where we are right now with, as we're now, 6-7 weeks into COVID-19. So Matthew, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So before you this evening, you have my report as well as the summary for the first 3 months. Obviously, there wasn't a huge impact in March, just based on the fact that things were just starting to be implemented partway through March. But as we go through, you can see there, we're tracking fairly well. But the one thing I do want to make is that the budget you see in there is the budget draft with the 0% increase. And so just want to make that note that it's the draft budget with that. I also added a new column for comparison purposes, and that's the year-to-date actual for 2019. So that's there for comparison as well. So when you're taking a look at the reports, the interim billing was due in February, so no effect on that. And then also the Ontario Municipal Property Partnership Fund is received in January, April, July, and October. So those will continue to flow, those payments. And I believe we just received our Q2 payment this week. When you take a look at the other revenue lines, you can see that the vast majority of them are kind of behind budget. We would expect that at this point in the year, simply because a lot of the activity happens in Q2 through Q4. And so not a lot happens in the first quarter, especially when it comes to grants and things like that. So that's why how you're seeing that run out there. When we take a look at the expense side, where things are progressing fairly well, each one of the budgets is under budget at this point in the year. And as we would expect, when you also compare it to last year, and in the vast majority of cases, we're actually under last year's amounts in each of those lines. So good news from that perspective. The one area that we're over is in social services, and that's simply due to the timing of debt payments that come due for St. Lawrence Lodge, and they become due in the first quarter and the third quarter. So all of that first half of the year ends up in that first quarter for St. Lawrence Lodge debt payments, and that's why you're seeing that over budget. It will return back to normal as we move forward in the next few months. A couple things I want to touch on: water and wastewater. You see that the revenue is actually negative. If you recall, our revenue always comes in 3 months after the fact. So April will be the first month that we'll start receiving revenue for 2020, and that will be January. And as we move forward, we're seeing a negative amount there because our equity investment in the wastewater treatment plant has lost a substantial amount of money in the course of this year. I just updated it as of yesterday, and that particular investment is down about $180 odd thousand, between 180 and 190,000. It has been worse over the last several weeks, and so it's starting to bring its way back. But certainly wanted to make that point so that everyone was aware. From there, you can see things are tracking fairly well when we are looking at expenses and moving along. I also want to provide council with kind of what we see as a revenue at risk point of view, and obviously interest and investment returns is substantially at risk. So we have two main investment and interest bearing vehicles. One is the high interest account, and our high interest account is where we store all of our excess cash and the vast majority of our reserves. And so it was earning 2.4% up to the second last week in March. It has since dropped to 0.9, just below 1%. I believe it's 0.915. And so that's a substantial decrease of approximately 60%. So we had budgeted approximately $120,000 in revenue that would be derived from those reserve and operating excess funds. And just by the very nature of the decreasing interest rate, that will decrease substantially in terms of the revenue received. The second investment vehicle that we have is for the wastewater treatment plant. It's a long-term investment horizon, and certainly it's more equity-based. And because it's equity-based, that's why you have the long-term horizon. But certainly the events of the last 6 to 8 weeks has had a dramatic effect on that. That being said, last year we earned $212,000 on that investment, and so it shifts with the market. Last year was an exceptional year for market. The last 6 to 8 weeks has been very difficult for the market. As I mentioned, it has been lower, and in terms of the last couple of weeks, but then in the last week and a half, it has clawed its way back. So wanted to give an indication that by the end of the year, likely the investment and interest returns will be substantially less than the 202,000 budgeted. Fees and licenses. So there's marriage licenses, lottery licenses, wedding ceremony fees, and police checks are all kind of based on activity. And so we see these as being at risk, not completely, but certainly while we're not able to perform marriages and wedding ceremonies, then that has an effect on it. Lottery licenses are cyclical, and we're not exactly sure what the impact of it might be. And then obviously police checks, a lot of that is summer employment, things like that, that the OPP does the police checks, and then the net amount comes back to the town. So we see that as being a possibility for not achieving the budget in those cases. And finally, summer activities, we have obviously the pool and lighthouse and the marina, also several other programs that we run throughout the summer months, and we see those as being highly at risk. A lot of those programs are offset by expenses that we can also reduce, but certainly we want to highlight those as being the 3 areas that we see as being at risk from a revenue perspective at this point. We'll do everything, obviously, that we can to offset certainly the interest and the loss in fees. And then as we get a better understanding of what the summer looks like, then taking the opportunity to reduce the expenditures of those programs to match the loss in revenue. So as we move forward, one of the key things that we're going to have to manage very carefully is our cash flow. Obviously, we have reserve funds that we can rely on to be able to bridge the gap between the two. We also have $1 million line of credit that's available to the town that can be used at any time. But cash flow in particular, as we push the final payment for property taxes out into the 3rd and possibly 4th quarters, then certainly that's going to be something that we'll have to manage very carefully, because we have a number of large payments that will continue to come out, debt payments will continue to come out, our obligations to public health, as well as the United Counties, running our water and wastewater plants, and all of those types of things will continue to be expensed and paid out over the next several months, and through every month throughout the rest of the year. But we then, if we're going to be delaying the property tax bills, then we need to make sure that that we're just careful in terms of how that's managed. Other than
Matthew-
that, I'm more than
Matthew?
happy to answer any questions there might be.
Matthew?
Yeah.
Anything from the school board about them giving us some relief on the money that we owe them?
So in terms of the school board, we do have the information coming from Ministry of Finance that they are delaying the Q3 payment, which would normally be due the Q2 payment that would normally be due June 30th is going to be delayed until I believe September 30th. And then the amount that's normally due on September 30th will be due in December. So that being said, so we've already paid our Q1 payment. They were clear that those still continued. Ministry of Finance will help bridge the school boards during the Q2 and the Q3 payment. But what it really means is that 25% of the school board taxes will become due on September 30th and 50% will become due in December. So that's kind of how we see that working out from a cash flow perspective.
And the debenture for St. Lawrence Lodge, any relief there?
Not that I'm aware of. And so we've already paid our first half year, which was due in March. And then our second part of the year will probably be due sometime in August, September. So.
Yeah, nothing has come up in terms of joint services costs and so on yet. We haven't had a joint services meeting in a while. Counties have had a couple of their own meetings, but we haven't had anything with JSC. So I'll let everyone know on that if and when that comes up with regards to payments like what we pay for the lodge. Matthew, did you have anything further? Or
just the only thing I was going to say is that we will be working on a cash flow projection that we'll bring back in May. So that will help inform making a decision around those final tax bills and the timing of them, so that council is fully aware of our obligations from a payments out the door and what that could mean from a payments coming in the door.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. So open it up for comments, questions, and just whip around the table as quickly as possible. Again, if you don't have a comment, please feel free to say so. Councillor Burton, please.
Thank you. I did have a few questions earlier today, but Matthew was very quick in responding to my email, so I appreciate that, Matthew. So nothing for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burton. Councillor Jansman?
As far as the interest revenue goes, I appreciated, Matthew, that you said you made mention of our last year's gains because they were significant. So just to somewhat offset the bad news this year, and like you have mentioned, it's already seen improvements in the last week and a half. So that's great. I was pleased to hear the Prime Minister's announcement this morning about summer students. So grateful that we haven't committed to any summer students, and especially if the summer activities aren't going to be able to happen. It's going to be a huge job, as Matthew indicated, to try to offset the revenues with the expenses. So I very much a large portion of that of our expenses, of course, is salaries and benefits. So and we don't want to possibly go there, but we can't ignore that either. So anyway, I look forward to that cash flow projection that you mentioned, Matthew, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor McConnell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd. The loss of our interest revenue is certainly something that we have to consider, but I think we're reasonably fortunate here. And since we've had Matthew on board, I can remember speaking at some point within the last few months to the amount of money we put away last year for different things. some of those were for specific things, like I think we put either 220 or 250 away for the new rink. We put 50 away for infrastructure, a variety of things like that were in that 891,000. And a lot of those things were specific in the year that we put it for. But given the fact that most of the things we put money, like the rink, for example, I just take that because it's easy, low hanging fruit. It's right there and it's big. With the size of that project, if we were to not have them put away for that for this year, basically it adds 1 year onto the payment, which is 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road. So I think we can, if we have to, look at something like that for some of the normal things that we put money away for. Maybe we don't put money away for a new fire truck, or maybe we don't put money away for a new dump truck this year. But I think we're all flexible enough, and Matthew has got a good enough hand on things that he can tell us what we need to do to get through this. And I think the decision we made last time, or at least discussed, and that was going down to a 0% budget increase is the way to go here. Under the circumstances, I don't think it would be responsible to look for a tax increase. And we also discussed the timing of the two payments. I know the school board was, I think, the end of September, and then again in December. I think perhaps if we boosted the July payment, the end of July payment, to the end of August or the end of September, and then the end of August to either the end of October or November, I think would be wise. I don't think we want to put it into December, because then you're looking at Christmas, and that's not a real good time to be collecting taxes. Money, there's better places that money can be used. That's all I have there, Todd. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor McConnell. Councilor Ostrander, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a bit of a guessing game, I guess, given the situation we're in. 2 or 3 of our categories here, 3 or 4 of them, finished with the descriptor that they are at risk, and I guess that's the best way to put it for now. Just wondering if any of the other projects we have underway have, there's been no mention on the rink recently. I take it it's in hiatus now. I realize we were waiting for a May or June an announcement. I just wondered if anything's happened there. It doesn't appear to have. Just the fact that the summer is a bit of a question mark right now. The closer we get to it, the less of a question mark it will be, and we'll have to live with the reduced revenue from the various aspects we have. So I appreciate Matthew's extra work on some of these areas to make them look as plausible as possible. But unfortunately, it's as things roll out, we will know a little more about things. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Ostrander. Just quickly on the arena, I did ask Matt. Matt and I have talked about it a little bit lately, and I've asked him to try to get a meeting together with Judy and David and Matthew and myself, just to kind of get a quick update on what they're thinking, and like Judy and David in particular. I think we're going to have to reconfirm donations. We're going to have to almost, I'm not going to say completely reboot it, but it's obviously, this has changed everything, and we've got to check with the donors. We've got to also check with the province when they're ready to be able to comment on that, what's going to happen with that infrastructure funding. The agreement was already set in place between the province and the feds. Hopefully that won't change, because usually with situations like this, they're always looking for infrastructure stimulus and projects to help get us out of this sort of economic trouble. So hopefully that's still there, but right now yeah, we're, like you say, we're just kind of in a holding pattern with it, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward on the arena at some point. But right now, it's always just we're just in a playing a waiting game there with that. But we'll get back to council and we'll try to get it on the agenda as soon as possible, so everybody knows what's up there and what Judy and David can put together and help us with to confirm the donations and just their recommendations for a path forward. It's a real tragedy in that regard too. It pales in comparison to what some people are going through here, economically and otherwise. But it is a disappointment that we're almost certainly going to lose a full year in the arena build and other projects as well. Matt and I did talk about things like the East Street reconstruction we're looking at for this year and other things, and you'll have more on that a little later, probably the next meeting. But it's just with the cash flow implications, it's going to be difficult for us to do much of anything this year, and that's kind of the sad reality right now. Mike, did you have anything else?
No, that's good. Thank you on the points you brought up. I guess we need to know at some time on some of these things. So thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a fuller update for that, but we're just going to try to talk to the main lead organizers there and just see what their take is, so we can come back with a full report.
Good.
Thank you, Councillor Shankar.
Yes, thank you. I was listening to Doug Ford either today or yesterday, and he talked a little bit about Victoria Day as a date that they have projected to perhaps ease restrictions. Having said that, I just wanted to know if we have a drop dead date that we have in mind for, some of our recreational summer activities like the pool and the lighthouse and the marina. Do we have a date in mind where we're either going to not open them this summer or we're going to open them at a certain time? For the students, for the public, for our own operations staff, I think we need to have this thought of at this point.
Yeah, excellent point. If I could comment briefly on what we've kind of been looking at as the emergency control group is looking at everything as May 12th hits and see where the province is with the emergency declaration. That's sort of the date we've been looking at in terms of the boat launch and a lot of other things, but we haven't looked at any sort of recommendations for firm dates on where we'd be on opening the pool, the marina, and so on. Matthew, comment on that?
Certainly. So I think the Premier's comments this morning got quite a bit of buzz in terms of news coverage and whatnot. And I believe this afternoon he tried to temper those comments by saying, we're going to take a look at that timing, but any releasing of restrictions is definitely going to be phased. So I think we just need to keep that in mind. Certainly, we see the opening of the marina. Right now, it's on the non-essential business list, and so it is required to remain closed as we get closer to May 12th. And I think the mayor is exactly right that the province should be providing a clear picture of where we move after May 12th and in the week leading up to that. So for us, I think that's kind of our next milestone date that we can kind of look at. Certainly, as they start releasing restrictions, then having a good understanding of what that means. If in all reality, I think certainly the pool opening June 1st is going to be a difficult one, as well as the marina opening Victoria Day weekend. So that's just my personal feeling at this moment and my best guess. But certainly over the next couple of weeks, that's going to be what we're going to be focused on is there any possibility to open them? And if there isn't, then what is our next step and date? So if it's not June 1st for the pool, is it July 1st? If it's not July 1st, is it some other date? And then being able to take a look to see what is the feasibility of that. We haven't received information on what summer jobs have been approved for our organization. So certainly we put our application in back in February, and I think we're supposed to hear in the next few weeks. So that will also help us guide our how we move forward, because that I believe are being funded at 100% this year as opposed to just a top-up amount. So that will certainly have a financial impact as well, and be able to allow us to have that discussion. One thing that we are trying to do from a staff perspective is identify those positions that are, what activity drives them. So for a lot of our operations and group is that the grass is still going to keep growing. There's still, a lot of maintenance work that we do throughout the spring and summer with those seasonal positions. So some of those positions certainly we might want to continue with, but then the ones with the pool, the marina, the lighthouse, those certainly are going to be very much based on what restrictions get lifted and when, and be able to react to those.
Thanks, Matthew. Gory, anything further?
No, I did receive an email today from St. Lawrence Shakespeare about their decision to postpone the season. And I was just wondering, how that's going to affect us in the town in terms of, the community grants, if we're still going to cut a check for that, and the $30,000 that we wrote them a check for earlier.
Yeah, can we actually put that on the next agenda for, that's all happened fairly quickly in the last few days with their final decision. If we could put that on the next agenda for a review and see where we where we're at with that. If unless Matthew, if you want to comment on that now, but I know we'll definitely have some discussion around that, because obviously there's some implications there with our budget and theirs, and we need to get a little more clarification from them still on what they're planning with regards to this summer, what expenses they may have and so forth. So I think we need to get a little more information from them as well. But Matthew, any other comment on that?
Yeah, I think absolutely having a conversation around the community grants and being able to just identify which ones are affected by this and how we want to respond to that. It makes perfect sense for the next meeting, and just being able to follow up with Shakespeare to get a good understanding of how they're going to move forward over the next several months. And certainly I think the message we received is that they're looking forward to next year and being full bore again. So certainly we appreciate that move forward.
Anything further, Councillor Shaker?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Young, please.
Just a little clarification on what Gory and Matthew said. Gory used the word postpones. Shakespeare, does that mean it's canceled this year, or they're looking for a later time slot?
I think it's canceled this year.
It's canceled this year with the possible exception of the community play this fall.
All right, that's logical. Good. Just while I was sitting here, I got a stock report in on my phone, and if you want some good news, 17 of the 20 stocks that I'm watching went up today. So we're hoping for a
Good
couple
for
of
you,
more.
anyways. That's
Yeah. Anyway, no, all my other concerns were answered. I was thinking the other day, wouldn't it be great if we could call an end to this whole thing by July 1st and get together with Ogdensburg and have one great fireworks display to celebrate? Anyway, that's just wishful thinking. I know Ottawa has canceled July 1st, but ours wouldn't be anywhere near that size. So hopefully we can go forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. I think we definitely need to talk about some sort of community bash at some point whenever it's feasible to do so. And absolutely, and earlier the better. But who knows? Everything's so up in the air right now. Anything further from anyone? Any supplemental comments? Sorry, Councillor Burton, did you have? Leanne, are you still there?
I think everyone's here.
Okay,
Nope.
yeah, you kind of froze up there for a moment, or I did.
Yeah.
I just had one quick comment just on the another area that we're not opening right now is just the boat launch. There was some discussion about that, and in terms of tying into marinas and so on. We did have a discussion, the Leeds Grenville mayors this morning about that. We're maintaining the course, and we're not going to open until May 12th. The OPP are actually really encouraging that we remain closed right now as well. I believe all the other municipalities in Leeds and Grenville are doing the same thing, with the exception of Athens is keeping theirs open, I believe, because it is a municipal decision right now on boat launches that aren't attached to marinas, publicly owned. And Edwardsburg Cardinal, though, is seriously considering opening for the 2nd of May. And that's something that's obviously their business. And they will be probably the only one in our area of the St. Lawrence on that weekend. But at any rate, that just ties in with that May 12th date with everything else. So we'll still be closed until that time. Anything else from anyone before we move on? Okay. Thanks very much, and thanks, Matthew, for that report. And moving right along to 5.2, that's staff report 24-2020. That's water and wastewater rates and payment deferrals. The suggested motion is that council approve the current water and wastewater rates remain unchanged until December 31st, 2020, and that council indicate to Rideau St. Lawrence Utilities direction to waive late payment fees on outstanding water and wastewater accounts for town of Prescott customers, and that a copy of this motion be sent to all other municipalities that use RSL for billing water and wastewater charges on their behalf to coordinate the change. Can I ask for a motion on that, please, to get it on the table?
I can make that motion.
Sorry, Councilor Burton, was that you?
Yes.
Okay, moved by Councilor Burton. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Ostrander. Matthew, back to you for the report.
Okay, thank you very much. So we received 2 independent requests. One was pertaining to a vacant property, and the homeowner was wondering if there was a possibility of forgiving the water and wastewater fixed amounts on the vacant home. There's a long history of this topic coming up for vacant properties, and so my recommendation is to continue with that charge as the service is still available and through past history. The second request was for a fairly large water user in the town of Prescott, and their request was to either have a reduction in the water rate or to have a deferral program in place. So certainly we had discussed increasing water rates by 2%, and to that end, I'm just putting out there that in last year when we implemented the rate increase, it was at June 1st, and so we could delay any rate increases until at least after December 31st of 2020, which is only a difference of 7 months for that. So just an option that council may want to consider, but certainly is it not required to do so. The second part was we did reach out to RSL to find out Rideau St. Lawrence Utilities, they bill on our behalf for water and wastewater. And so we wanted to understand how feasible it was to be able to waive those fees. They were great at getting back to us, and in their letter, they also—
Sorry, Matthew, can I ask if everyone could not speaking at the time, just mute your mics? It's leading to a lot of crosstalk and little distortion. So if you don't mind just muting while other reports are being read. It's a little bit of a bandwidth hit too.
So we did reach out to RSL, and in their response, the board has made a decision to start to waive late payment fees for their electricity customers. They would like to be able to do that for their water customers as well. However, their billing system is based on type of service, and so while it's easy for them to make the electricity call on their own behalf, they have to get all of the municipalities that are partners in billing water and wastewater to agree to waiving that fee. So I've already reached out to a couple of the municipalities and for their consideration, and just to let them know that we were discussing this. And so wanted to put that option out there as well. So my recommendations are twofold, really. One is to continue with the fixed water and wastewater. There's a lot of vacant properties that attract that fee, and so trying to now pull that back off is going to be a difficult process, and something that throughout the history of our charging of water and wastewater, we've continued to do so. The second is to just give some options around rate increases and the timing of those if council so chooses, and then also giving the option of being able to waive the late fees for water and wastewater that's billed through RSL. So this is an opportunity to just provide options, but more than happy to carry out council's wishes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Matthew. I think we've lost Leanne again. I don't see her here. Is anybody else? Is she on anybody else?
No.
I think so hopefully she'll join us here in a moment. I'll go back to her then after we get moving. Thanks a lot for that report, Matthew, and bringing us up to date on some things there. So we'll start with Councillor Jansman this time around. You're still muted, Teresa. If only it were that easy.
I won't say it.
Matthew, when you mentioned you did reach out to other municipalities, what was their initial reaction?
So from, this was simply from a staff perspective. It wasn't from a, they haven't brought it before their councils as far as I know. And so from a staff perspective, they were supportive and being able to make that recommendation to their own councils. And that was really the tenor of the conversation.
Okay. When we passed a motion on March 26th for the 2% increase, I was one of the ones who was in favor of that because it was at the time quite logical, and we would still have been average with the 2%. So I was very okay. I slept good that night. But with the large business that uses our water, I have to assume they bring in a lot of economic development too. So that's an angle that was not part of the equation on March 26th. So I took that into consideration, and I do think that us now changing our minds and not having it to be a 2%, although I think that motion should have, I'm not sure if it did, but it should have included like a delay in when that started, as Matthew mentioned. I would be okay with keeping it now at a 0%, with the understanding that it has to be well communicated to this business owner, because although they're asked, and they may not know that it was a very, very big ask, because now we know that Rideau St. Lawrence can't just do a selected group. It is now going to affect everybody. So that is a significant amount of cash flow for us. So although their ask was to reduce a rate, keeping it at 0, it has to be communicated to them that that is a big reduction. So that's all I really had to say on that. I would agree with waiving the late fees. I just see it as an administrative mess a little bit if not everybody agrees, but that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Jansman. See, Councillor Burton's back with us. So I'll go back. Leanne, you just missed just the very tail end of Matthew's report and just some of Teresa's comments. So please, over to you.
Yep, thank you. I do agree with the recommendations on waiving the late fee for all the town of Prescott customers. I think it's a step in the right direction to help our citizens in this uncertain time. So I do definitely agree with that. I would like to see a payment deferral plan though, and see with the recommendation of the 90 days. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burton. Councillor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Actually, there's several issues here. The first issue, if memory serves me correctly, is the issue of vacant properties and whether or not we maintain the status quo there. And given the fact that we have in the infrastructure to those properties, I would say we maintain the status quo and don't drop off those charges. Secondly, as far as the increase in water fees, I voted against that. I felt, given the fact that we increased them 3% last year, and when we discussed this in the winter, we were already on the fringes of this COVID disaster that we find ourselves in now. I felt that we should stay at 0%. 2% was passed. The last time we discussed it, which I think was our last video meeting here, I believe we decided to defer it to the fall, the increase. Now Matthew is suggesting that we defer it to the first of next year. I would go one step farther and agree with Teresa that we go back and look at it completely and agree not to have an increase at all this year. And then when we look at our budget process for next year, which I presume we'll start in the fall again, if indeed we decide to raise it by 1%, 2%, whatever, that would take effect, I think, in June of 2021. I think that's when the increases take effect. As far as the large user that's asked for a break, a deferral, whatever, I'm aware of which large user we're talking about, and I think they are very weather oriented. So if we happen to have a wet summer, it's not going to make any difference. They're not going to use much town water. If we happen to have a very dry summer, well, then they are going to use a lot of town water. So I think perhaps, I don't know if we can do it across the board. I don't think it may not be needed across the board, but maybe on an individual basis for that particular user, some kind of a deferral or stretching out of fees. Problem there is if things don't open up, the income stream that they have to pay these bills just isn't going to be there. However, they still have to use the water to maintain the structure. So they're in a hard spot, and they're a prime part of our community. So I think we should reach out and try and do something for them. But as far as deferral fees goes, charging interest goes from here out till the end of the year, I would be against doing that. I think we should work with our people as much as possible. The one advantage we have here is probably a disadvantage at other times, and going back to the car plant that they're trying to get, or some huge factory in Edwardsburg Township, Mayor Todd has pointed this out, and he's quite correct that if we had somebody in the way of a factory moved in here that wanted to hire a couple thousand people, we'd be hard pressed to come up with the labor force to do it, because our age in this area, especially in Prescott, happens to be older folks, seniors, and they're not looking for jobs. The benefit of that is those seniors are getting a steady income every month. I know I'm looking at 3 people on this screen right now, myself included, and our checks aren't going to change. So we are still able to pay the bills, and I think that's going to be the case with a lot of the senior population in town. So in this particular instance, it is a bit of a benefit for us. That's all I have, Mayor Todd. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor McConnell. Councilor Ostrander, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a very good, I guess you could say, first step in order to give our water and wastewater customers a break. I also think it's a good move on our part that a copy of this motion be sent to other municipalities that use RSL. I think that the common refrain we hear every day out there is we're all in this together. And perhaps that shows a good lead gesture on our part. So I would go along with this as it states, and hopefully RSL would give us some support on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Ostrander. Councilor Shankar.
Yes, thank you. So in reading this report to council, I think our hands are kind of tied with RSL doing our billings, and if they can't separate our customers from theirs, I'm fine with no late fees. In terms of the large consumer requesting a deferral, I think a deferral, I'm fine with that, a payment deferral plan. I mean, who knows? This might only be another month to go now, so I think I'm fine with that as opposed to reducing the whole rate altogether. Because if you do it for one, you're going to have to do it for everybody. So if we can do a deferral plan for that consumer, that's fine. And anyone, if there's others that are going to ask, then we have to make that available to them as well. Cool, Matt.
Thank you, Matthew.
I just wanted to clarify that waiving of the late fee is basically creating a deferral program, so that way, if it's, let's say it's going to be 90 days, then in that 90 days, they wouldn't attract any interest, and therefore it would remain outstanding, but then they're able to pay it. If they pay it by the end of that 90 days, then it's all interest free. So that's why because we don't want to necessarily go down the road of creating separate deferral programs for each and every customer that we have, which is between 1 and 2,000. So that's why we thought that by waiving the late fees, that it does give that flexibility to create people that are able to pay and want to pay, then they're able to make those payments. And then those that would like to defer have that opportunity as well without collecting interest. So just wanted to make that clarification. And why we've worded it the way we have is that we do need to reach out, I believe, to the other 4 partners to just get them on board as well, so that if we can all line up and everyone agrees, then we can create that program across the board and have some consistency. It does also help that RSL has made the decision itself to not implement late fees for electricity on their bills. So again, it's trying to create some consistency in that overall. And so that's why we kind of worded it the way we did.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Anything further, Gordon?
No, that's it.
Thank you. And Councilor Young.
Well, the large customer is crying wolf a little bit too early, in my opinion. So I think we can wait on that. The increase, our expenses are going to continue to go up this year, regardless of what the circumstances are. And quite likely our revenues are going to go down with some of the large users of water not operating. So I am concerned that if we don't put through a small increase, we're going to have a much bigger deficit. My recollection when we decided on the 2%, it was because we have been running deficits the last couple of years. Was it not, Matthew?
The amount that we should be putting away is for infrastructure renewal is definitely dwindling. So from an operations perspective, the rates are covering it, but that water and wastewater rate also is required to pay for the renewal of water and wastewater infrastructure. So really that's what we're trying to do, is make sure that we're continuing to be able to support those as well. So the 2% that we're talking about would go to support those infrastructure renewals. That's one of the reasons why I've suggested that we put off any major street reconstruction for this year, for a couple of reasons. One, we're now at the end of April and we don't have a tender out yet. The second being is that that project will be in excess of $1 million. So being able to defer that project will have a substantial impact on our overall ability to manage our cash flow through this several months and towards the end of the year. So it's a couple of fold there, and really my suggestion here is to just not implement any increase in the course of 2020, but take a look at it to see when and by how much we would look at that in 2021 as part of the budgeting process.
Do you have a guesstimate what that 2% going back to zero will cost us in revenue?
So for the 7 months, so if we'd implemented it June 1st and gone to the end of the year, then it would have been about $32,000.
Okay. Thank you. I can live with the zero till January 1st.
Thanks very much, Councillor Young. Go around again. Anybody else have anything to add? Supplemental question, Councillor Schenker?
So having said that, $32,000, Matthew, and also saying that there's 1,000 to 2,000 customers.
Mhm.
So are we looking at like $2 a month? What are we looking at, a 2%?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's a pretty good guess.
I believe it worked out to about $1.80 per month. And so, yeah, that's really what it was coming down to.
So us not charging 2% isn't even a coffee per month for the
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, we have to keep that in mind when we're cutting back, because that 32,000. I know you said you want to take it off the building of the roads or resurfacing of roads.
But so, yeah, I think from my perspective, it was, there's two independent things. One is that 32,000 would go to supporting road rebuilding, but if we're concerned about managing cash, then doing major road reconstruction projects would be something that we need to put on hold for 2020, regardless, just from a cash flow perspective, because that is going to be a huge drain on cash, and because it happens very quickly as well. Also, putting out a tender now and having all of that work done, you'd be looking fairly late in the season. So, and from an infrastructure perspective, there is the ministry did have an intake of road projects last year as part of the first Canada infrastructure intake, and so I believe there's $200 to $300 million in projects that have been approved by the province. But then I was waiting for the Canadian government approval as well. So my guess, those would probably take precedence over any new funding announcements.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Councillor Schenker. Anyone else?
Brett?
Ray?
Yes. I understand Matthew talking about not doing capital on East Street or Dibble Street or whatever one we wound up doing. On the other hand, I would prefer to do some small capital that we can accommodate into our budget this year that maybe we weren't doing because we were doing the large road projects. Is there any small items that we can think of that we can put in there?
Yeah, I think absolutely. We're currently taking a look at the road repaving budget and what that's going to look like for this year, and that's approximately $260,000 to $270,000. We're also looking at our sidewalks, continuing along with that replacement and shaving program. Also, there's a number of projects that we had on the project list that I wanted to come back to council at our next meeting and just be able to review to say which ones can we move forward with, which ones can we defer, and then is there anything else on the list that we want to consider for 2020?
Great. I don't want to stop doing everything. But I understand that we're going to have less money to play with this year, but we have to do some things.
Absolutely. So, yeah, absolutely. All those regular maintenance types of issues, as well as those projects that we're able to do from a physical distancing standpoint, because we're not quite sure how long that's going to last, then that has a big impact on what projects we can move forward with.
Okay, let's put a report in the next meeting to look at capital, look at what we can do for next year, for this year that's feasible. That'll fit in. I think Matthew was planning on addressing some of this with regards to the cash flow analysis that'll be coming forward as well to see what we can afford, because I know I totally agree with you, Councillor Young, whatever we can do. And as much as I think this is going to be a lost year, I think we do have to, we're obviously not, the things that we're saying today and whatever could change as well. So we've got to make sure that we have some options available to us depending on what's available to us for funding towards the, and maybe, maybe there is a way to get a larger project in towards the end of the year. I think it's probably not very likely at this moment, but depending on what deals could even be available out there, there are possibilities. And I just think we have to kind of be prepared to be a little flexible here and move where the opportunities arise, because I am concerned about, and I know what Matthew's saying about larger projects like East Street, but I wouldn't want something with East Street to turn into something that we had with Henry, where we have to do it urgently and kind of cobble the project together. Henry Street went very well, but it was a big shock to all of us, monetarily and otherwise, and it's not something that would be very pleasant for the residents on East Street if we had an issue. That said, everything has been, the cameras have been sent down everywhere, and we know where the problem issues are, but at the same time, that is an issue that is very pressing. And there are a few other ones as well. That block at the end of Henry Street by Sophia is in just spectacularly awful shape. Anyone that, please drive down there, go very slowly, but it's deteriorated greatly just over the last 6 months or so. And we also have things like the dock frontage in front of the water treatment center. There are a number of projects there that are still possible. Finishing the splash pad, of course, is something that hopefully when the clearances come on construction and so on in the next little bit, we can get back there and at least get the project finished, if not open this summer, depending on regulations. Anyone have anything further on this before we wrap it up? I just want to say I'm glad we took a second look at this as well, because I did think that we should. I know it's not a tremendous amount of money, but every little gesture does help. And I think going back there is going back to the zero this year is a good move. I wasn't in favor of moving back to it before, so I'm kind of glad we're doing that. At the same time, the other thing I wanted to add about RSL is what RSL can basically say all it wants about how it wants consistency and everything else. But last I looked, we were the largest shareholder, and I think we do have a little bit of weight there if we did actually. I mean, I don't think it'll have to come to that, because it does sound like everyone's going to get on board with this. But I think we could request them to look at something else if we have a municipality that doesn't want to do what we're looking at there. Hopefully, we can come up with a compromise with this, and everyone will work together. But at the same time, if RSL has to be a little flexible with one municipality as opposed to the others, there's nothing set in stone that they're not able to do that. It's obviously more of a hassle for them, and they obviously don't want to go down that road, and I understand why. But I mean, it's not like billing software can't be altered, especially in times of crisis like this. So I just want to note that's not exactly set in stone. So anyways, if we're all good to go there, I will go back and return to the vote on the motion. So just for everyone who could be watching this as well, just to reread the motions, council approves the current water and wastewater rates that they remain unchanged until December 31st, 2020, and that we indicate to Rideau St. Lawrence Utilities direction to waive late payment fees on outstanding water and wastewater accounts for Town of Prescott customers, and that a copy of this motion be sent to all other municipalities that use RSL for billing water and wastewater charges on their behalf to coordinate the change. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. And report 5.3, that's report 25-2020-171 King Street West. Sean, are you going to take this one entirely, or is Matthew going to lead into it?
Sure, I can lead into it if you'd like. So I believe a request was made to have by the developer to have the permit fees as well as the development fees or development charges waived for the project. I believe that request was made to you, Mayor Todd. If you want to provide additional information, by all means. So we did take a look at it from a staff perspective, and I'll let Sean kind of speak to that.
Okay, just if everyone could bear with me, I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page and that they're aware of exactly where this project is. Basically, in 2019, this property was bought, and preparation began on the physical land, basically prepping it for construction. However, to date, and I got to stress this, no permits for building have been issued, but building plans have been reviewed. They were first reviewed back in 2019, and unfortunately, they'll be needed to be reviewed again. And I just received the new ones the other day due to the numerous changes that occurred in the building code at the start of the year. As well as building, the planning department is continuing to work towards site plan control involving McIntosh Perry and EVB, and also the following other town departments have been involved as well, including bylaw, operations, and the fire department. To date, over 100 hours of staff time have been used on this project, and it's anticipated that it'll probably be close to 400 hours by the time we are all said and done. In addition, we received consultants' bills already totaling between $15,000 and $20,000 on this project. So again, this project is for a 3-story building of which the main floor is mainly parking, and 2 stories with 16 rental units. And that breaks down into 2 1-bedrooms, 4 3-bedrooms, and 10 2-bedroom units. So the building footprint is 9,225 square feet on each floor. And like I said, the main floor is mainly just the parking garage with lobby and elevator and service room. And then the units are above. To give you an idea, the 1-bedrooms are 640 square feet, and the larger ones, including some of the 2-bedrooms that get quite larger, almost 930 square feet. In addition, besides the 3 levels, there'll also be quite a bit of in-ground work, including foundation, water, sewer, and storms. So using, because I haven't got a construction permit submitted yet, I use the construction calculator to show what the project value is going to be roughly. I did use a slightly higher end, so if he does come in slightly less than that with the value, there shouldn't be a problem with accepting it. But the maximum his building permit fees would be $41,166.56. In addition, the development charges, which I've included in my report, are set out, and they would generate another $37,958. Coupled with the planning stuff that's been going on, all total, all fees, all in, because in the end, most people only care about what the total fees are. It doesn't matter which bucket you're putting it in, is $82,884.56. As was previously discussed with council at an earlier meeting, the building fees charged by the town of Prescott are actually considerably lower than what they would be in most other places. And we did double check this against a couple other municipalities, and our fees were quite a bit lower than what they would be in those other municipalities. So a request was made to bring this forward. Some of the things that I can warn you about is if we decided to waive the development charges fees, it basically nulls and voids the bylaw. We would actually have to start from scratch again before we could re-implement another development charges for other people. Also, anyone that has currently paid would be within their rights to request a refund as well. So to give you an idea, the development charges study is about $15,000 to $20,000. Now, one of the things that we can do, and I have done in the past, is we can certainly stagger and delay the costs. That is very legal and very allowed when requested. they would have to understand that there would be some sort of agreement put into place, including what would happen if they ever failed not to pay the fees, which would basically meaning the fees would be added to the property tax bill. But like I say, we could extend the building permit fees over 6-month periods, or if we didn't want to have an exact timeline, you would do it at basically different stages of construction. So X amounts is due at foundation, X amounts is due when we get, the onto the second floor, X amount is due, whenever the case may be. And development charges from the current provincial government are allowed to be deferred until occupancy at minimum. But again, should you wish, you could decide to accept them over a longer period of time. So from a financial point of view, assuming that none of the fees and charges are being waived, there would be no effect still on the bottom line. And like I say, I think that covers everything that's been asked for in this report.
Thanks very much, Sean. Just for clarity's sake, we are talking about two fairly different matters here. I mean, it's the same impact to our revenue at the end of the day, but the development charges, that's what Mr. Paul gave the comment on. That's just on the DCs, which is the 37.9. That's separate from our actual building permit fees of the 41,166. So just to clarify that, so I'm correct on this, that exists in a separate area, the building permit fees. What we're talking about with the development charges is that you're looking at two different cost centers here and two different bits of municipal legislation here, correct?
It is definitely two, but the effect is really the same. If we decided to waive any of the property permit costs without following our normal bylaw, it would basically null and void our bylaw, and we'd have to basically reconsider every person that's ever put in a permit during this current bylaw. But like I said, in both cases, the town can reach an agreement where things are delayed or deferred if needed. The nice thing is,
Just
you can also
permits, because have we not waived permit fees before for agencies such as the housing Habitat for Humanity? I thought we've done this in the past, waive permit fees. Again, that would be with not-for-profits. It's obviously a little different, but it's the same. And I've never heard it described as we would basically void our entire bylaw.
Yeah, like I said, again, someone would have to bring it up. Like I say, it is a dangerous thing to start doing. And don't get me wrong, there's certain ways that you could go around it. For example, if council wishes to pay the building permit fees through another part of the budget, that is one way that shows the fees were paid, because the building department is immaterial who pays the fees, just that the fees be accounted for. And like I say, it is one of those things that from looking at what he would be billed at any other municipality, he can certainly always follow the bylaw and pay them under protest, in which case at the end of the thing, we would do an accounting and an auditing of the entire thing. And should he find that he was paid more than, or like less than what he paid involved less than 75% of the total costs, he would be entitled to a refund at that point. But it's still based on the fact that going forward, he pays the fees up front.
Thanks very much. I'll just a quick comment again before I move it on. The developer did approach me and I passed it on to staff immediately, talking about hardship, current economic climate and so forth. And also they have had that delay. This is for those watching this at home that don't know the address, 171 King Street West is a former Daniels property. So that's basically the great big swimming pool that's been excavated for the last 7, 8, 9 months, if not close to a year now. So that's the site we are talking about. And he has, obviously there was a delay there, nothing to do with the town of Prescott, but there was an issue there with a regulatory issue with the Ministry of the Environment. Just not for everyone out there's knowledge, it's not a contaminated soil issue. It was purely regulatory. It seems to have been worked out now, but we still need final clarity on that from the province as well before he can be given, the developer can be given a record of site condition that can fully move forward. But anyways, that's where it is with that. So open it up for discussion and start with Councillor Burton, please. Sorry, Lan, you're still muted.
I get kicked off and now I'm muted. Okay, here we go. I was just thanking Sean for his detailed report and reading it over. It is a lot of hours that our staff have put into this. And I think at this particular time, I am not in favor of waiving the fees. I think it would just snowball into other areas at this time. So unfortunately, I'm not in favor of waiving fees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jansman.
Mayor Todd, could you clarify something for me? I'm struggling with this one, truthfully. So is it because of COVID-19 that he's having cash flow problems? Like, why didn't this come to us before? Is it a result of the economic atmosphere right now?
That's one part of it. The other part of it is the year delay that they've suffered here. They were trying to get construction started last August, and that's when the MOE issues came up with the province. So it's a little of both, but and I won't get into some of the fuller details because I don't think he'd prefer that to be shared publicly. But yeah, that is essentially correct. It's a combination of COVID-19 and also the wait, the delay from last year.
So we
Basically.
we could potentially, the permit fees are a little bit more flexible than the development charges. So we, as Mr. Mayor mentioned, we could offer to pay them on our own, as well as we could possibly consider, like, anyway, okay, I leave that alone. That's for a later time, but is that a possibility? Like, they're kind of equal amounts relatively, 41,000 to 38,000. So it's kind of a wash, right? Like half and half?
Yeah, that's how I read the report. With the 41.1 in building permit fees and the development charges, roughly 38,000. And site plan fees and minor variance of another almost 4,000.
I guess I'm struggling because I'm fearful. I don't know what their alternative is. Like is this, what if we don't try to help him, accommodate him a little bit? That's where my fear is. I'm certainly in favor of waiting for occupancy. I love that if it was only that easy. I just think that that's too much of a option that won't really mean too much to him because I'm fearful it won't even get to that point if we don't help him. Is that fair?
I lost you there for a minute. My internet disconnected and reconnected, so I lost the last little bit of that.
I guess I'm just wondering, I'm struggling because I'm fearful that if we all jump to the great suggestion of deferring to occupancy, I'm fearful that if we don't help them before that, that won't even be the case. Is that a possibility?
I'm wary of even commenting on that. My bottom line for this one is there have been circumstances there beyond the developer's control with regard to COVID-19 now, and then that unfortunate situation with the ministry that resulted in the delay. And we share none of the blame on any of that. There are a lot of circumstances there that you could assign some guilt on that in a couple areas, not with us, but with other areas. And but the bottom line for me, it's almost a $4 million investment in the downtown, and I can't think of the last time we've had that kind of project on King Street of those sorts of dollars. And I would be wary about it possibly not going ahead, but I can't say for sure just how dire it is with the developer. I know there are economic challenges, or that is what he is claiming, and that's why I just asked for it to be brought forward to council tonight, because he wanted to be heard on this fairly quickly, because he is trying to he wants to get shovels in the ground, and he wants to get that started as soon as possible. But I can't predict.
One follow-up question, if I may, Matthew, Mr. Armstrong, if not a fair question, but do you foresee the Prime Minister, he seems to have taken every sector of our economic environment and tried to help them somehow. Do you foresee, or have you heard any kind of rumblings that developers might be in line here for help?
Certainly, I haven't heard anything to date. I think they're continuing to expand programs and reevaluate programs as they move along. But certainly, from a developing standpoint, I haven't heard anything. That might be certainly something as we start to ease restrictions and the economy gets going again, that they often focus on infrastructure type projects. What that will mean for the overall industry, I'm not quite sure, but certainly that's usually their focus.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Teresa. Councilor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Going back 2 or 3 councils, we struggled with the idea of development charges. We didn't have them. They were suggested by our Director of Public Works at the time, Craig Cullen, and he explained the purpose of them and what they could do. And I seem to recall the phrase, development pays for development. It shouldn't be on the backs of the existing taxpayers. So he sold me and council at the time on development charges. And quite frankly, I don't see any reason, while I am sympathetic with the developer, I don't see any reason to change that at this particular time. The last development that this particular developer did in town was interrupted for, geez, I think it was about 2 years from the time he first proposed it till they got their shovels in the ground. This looks like it's going to be the same type of a deal, more expensive building. But I think the policies that we have now in regards to development charges, the whole idea is that they pay for, or at least help to pay for, Mr. Merriman's department, and I believe we should stay the course with those charges. Now, as far as some flexibility collecting those charges, I would be quite happy to look at that. The occupancy date seems reasonable to me, but I would look at anything else there that I think is reasonable, but I think the charges should be maintained. Thank you.
Councilor McConnell, do you mean the development charges and the building permit fees? Because they are 2 separate charges.
I do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councilor Ostrander, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, it's an interesting situation. I think we, probably all of us get asked at least a question a month recently, or more than that, perhaps, when it was a fresher issue last summer, what's going on there type thing. And given the amount of work Mr. Merriman has put into this in his department, it's been a lot of work by the sounds of it. And I don't foresee my own opinion changing in that the fees that have been charged are probably fairly reasonable given the amount of work it's taken to get it to this point. I know that seeing this to fruition is a skepticism among a lot of people, and I'd like to think that we can hang in there. I just don't think we should be waiving fees at this time. I think they've been well earned on our behalf, and I think that shows partnership on our behalf. The developer may catch a break himself as this goes down the road. If this co-virus thing eases up and they're allowed to continue their normal progress with this. So I think we have to leave it as it is, in my own opinion, and accept the fact that it was all good intentions on both parts, obviously, but we have done our part, and I think it's the next move is pretty much in his ball court, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Osterman. Councillor Schenker.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. First of all, I want to thank Sean for a great report. It's well laid out. It explains it very well. I have no questions about it. I do see the amount of hours that have been put in by staff, 100 hours and maybe up to 400 hours. So, we have to offset that cost. I agree with my fellow councillors about still charging for both the developer fees and the permits. I do like the suggestion, though, that was in the report about considering a request to stagger or delay the costs. I'd be fine with that. If we could do that, as long as the customer knows that the fees need to be paid. So if we can put that on the motion, maybe then we can do that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Schenker. Yeah, we'll look at alternative motions as soon as we're through the first round here, because obviously I think we're going to need something like that. Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I'm not in favor of eliminating the cost for either development charges or building permit. Every developer is opposed to paying development fees. If we say yes to this one, everyone in the future will ask for the same thing. Deferring them, I have a problem with that, but not eliminating them. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I've got a couple comments to make on that, and I don't want to go too far down the road with this, because otherwise I should probably give up the chair of the meeting. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about, even if it was a portion of the building permit fees, I think if you went to anyone around the table and just said, hey, if we invested $20,000 or $30,000 or even $40,000 in something, and we generated a building in the downtown worth $4 million, I think that's probably a decision all of us would say yes to. And the other comment on this, while the report is thorough to a point, one thing I don't see here is what the taxation per year on the town would be on a $4 million multi-res building. Anyway, we have a ballpark on that, Matthew? Other than that, it's a lot.
So probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000 a year. I'd have to go back and confirm that. But certainly that what we're looking at. That I just want to make a comment, though, that there's lots of investors in the downtown as well as throughout Prescott that have paid similar fees.
Yeah, and we also have given out what's the end of the CIP funding too. So we are spreading money around there as well. So it's not like we're not giving money to businesses are currently in the downtown as well.
As we will be giving to him too, Brett. He will be taking advantage of the deferred taxes.
Oh
on the
yeah, no,
CIP grant.
I'm not
I'm
saying
sure.
it's just for him. I'm just saying at the end of the day, it's a $4 million project on King Street, and there have been some significant extenuating circumstances on this one.
Not on our part, though.
No, but we will be the ones that suffer in the end if it doesn't go ahead. But
If
that's
it
all I'll
doesn't-
say.
Yeah.
Councilor McConnell, and then Councilor Jansman, please.
Thank you.
I don't know whether I should ask this, but since you opened the book, what about this particular subject would cause you to vacate the chair? Do you have some kind of an interest here?
No, not at all. But if I'm the chair of the meeting, and if I'm going to advocate strongly for a position, I should turn it over to the deputy mayor. if, for example, I was going to argue strongly in this and make a motion, I would give up the chair. No, I have absolutely no interest in this project in any way, shape, or form.
If I may, strictly on a procedural issue, I can think of any number of times that, except for this unusual situation, when you're back at chair again, and the deputy mayors have chaired the meeting and they've been in favor of a particular issue, and myself included, and argued in favor of it. I don't see any reason why you should vacate the chair in that case. You're one of the 7 of us. If you believe in a position, you should be able to argue that position regardless of where you are in the meeting.
It's standard, it's basic Robert's Rules of Order and so forth. The clerk could probably, comment more on that. It doesn't happen that often, but I have had it. It's happened on numerous occasions. I've vacated. I thought I did at least once, and I have at counties, and it has happened at other meetings as well. I just put the option out there at times because the chair really should be more neutral on all matters to a point. I mean, you've got, obviously the chair always has an opinion, but if you're going to get to the point where you're arguing a strong position or possibly going to make a motion, and I don't feel that strongly about this because I'm the last person that wants to waive development fees. I've always been very in favor of development fees, and strongly was behind when we brought them in the first place, because I do believe growth has to pay for growth. I just think in this case, it's a little more extenuating circumstances. But Ms. Castleman, do you have any comment on that? Just it's standard procedure to turn it over if it is going to go down that road.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I've seen it done many times. I think it's been done once or twice in Prescott, where if the chair doesn't feel comfortable, especially if they're going to move a motion, I would recommend that you defer the chair to the deputy mayor while you move that motion. But other than that, I think we're good.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it. I'm not going to argue with that strongly. I am a little concerned, but I agree with the fees as well. And obviously we've got to recoup some costs here as best as possible. Did you have anything else, Councillor McConnell? Or?
No, I was just curious about your offer to vacate the chair, and I thought it should be cleared up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No connections in any way, shape, or form. Councillor Jansman, did you have a comment?
Sure. Well, I'm hearing around the table that it seems to be well supported of the deferral of payments. Also, too, that's what the CIP is, what I hinted at and didn't want to go down that road. But if we could communicate to the developer that there is something that we have more liberty with than this down the road, that would be a good. Thank you.
Well, if I can just speak to that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, please.
So this particular project has already been approved for Brownfield, and so I believe that committed us to about covering $15,000 of studies, as well as having a phased-in approach to taxes, to the property taxes, so that the developer could recoup, starting with 100%, then moving each year 20% less over 5 years to recover those brownfield costs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So since we are where we are, I think I have heard good support around the table to the request stagger delay the costs. So if we could have a motion giving staff direction to communicate that to the developer and look at an agreement there to stagger delay costs as noted in the last paragraph of the report. Kim, could you possibly just read back just a suggested motion there based on that last paragraph, and we'll see if anyone is comfortable making that and seconding it?
Sure. How about that staff be directed to communicate to the developer of 171 King Street West that building permit fees and development charges be delayed until occupancy? Is that what you were thinking?
Did we want to commit to that or leave it open for negotiations? Because there's a few things here about, or Matthew, are you good with that? Or is everyone good with that? I'm fine with whatever the wording is.
I think from a development charges perspective, we absolutely can wait till occupancy. From a building permit perspective, I think there's a couple of choices. Perhaps occupancy isn't the the right timing, but certainly we can develop a timing for that. This will also be part of the site plan control agreement that can be included at that time.
So is that an acceptable motion for everyone in terms of wording to move us forward?
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
What is the anticipation of occupancy? Date of occupancy, is that 3 years down the road?
Sean or Matt?
Well, if I may, Matthew and your worship, in all honesty, it depends on the developer. This project could probably be done if the government, you know, I'd hate to say it, but, you know, approved all the things that needed to be done quickly. It could be done in as little as 6 to 8 months after the first shovel goes into the ground. However, it can also go on quite a bit longer. Part of it is, again, factors that may or may not be in the developer's control. The only thing I was going to say to it is because I would suggest, like Matthew did, that it be part of site plan control, that the resolution or the direction simply just state that a suitable thing to both parties, because the reality is both parties would still have to agree at site plan control. That is directly between the town and the developer. So it can be worked out to an appropriate thing for all involved at the time so that both sides feel comfortable.
Follow up, Councillor Shanker?
No, that's good.
Councillor McConnell?
Something was mentioned in Sean's report about spreading them out, the possibility of spreading them out over 5 years. I wouldn't want to go anywhere near that. I think occupancy would be the absolute last thing that we would want to collect them. And I think the idea of paying so much as we went along, like once the foundation is in, you owe such a certain percentage. Once the first floor is done, you owe a certain percentage. Something that could be worked out like that between our staff and the developer, I think I would be fine with, but I don't want to prolong it over several years after it's occupied. I don't think that's a good idea.
Councillor Burton? You're still muted, Leanne. I know it's terrible to remember to turn that on and off.
Jeepers creepers. Anyways, I totally agree with Council McConnell. You need to write that down, Council McConnell, because that's one of lifetime abilities. But anyways, I think that we need a time frame on this. That 5 years down the road, 3 years down the road. I mean, the costs are just going to add up. So let's put a time frame that everybody's comfortable with. And I do like the suggestion that Sean made, that, you know, maybe we can come to an agreement between the two parties, us and the developer. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? And could I ask, Councillor Ostrander?
Yeah, well, I just wonder, just a question, I guess. Could this project not be encouraged to go along the lines of larger ones, I guess, where they have a phase 1 and then a phase 2 with dates attached and expectations? Perhaps that be a little more guidance for both of us, but I just don't know whether it would apply in this situation. Mr. Merriman, maybe?
Can I suggest we just, even if we have to tweak the motion a bit, there's no point negotiating this now, to be honest, because we don't know what the developer is even going to come back with. So if we just give staff direction to, you know, give them our decision and propose what's what, it's going to come back under the site plan control agreement. There's a lot that's going to be coming back to us before anything starts. But Sean, Matthew, any comment on Mike's question?
In all honesty, Mike, this would be one of the smaller projects to do a phased approach. But having said that, by staggering the bills, that's exactly what we're doing, is doing a phased approach. So
Okay, good. That's what it sort of had the flavor of as we were discussing it here. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Ostrander. Kimberly, can you read that motion again, and then I'll look for a mover and a seconder?
Yeah, I'll kind of tweak it so that it represents what you've said, that staff be directed to communicate to the developer of 171 King Street West that building permit fees and development charges be staggered, and then this be further negotiated between the developer and staff.
I think that's the gist of everything. It gives staff the ability, draws the line with the development charges and the building permit fees, and gives staff the ability to negotiate deferrals, delays, so on. Is that good for everyone? Is someone willing to make that motion?
I will.
Moved by Councillor Burton. I see Councillor Young with his hand up. He just beat you, Mike. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion is passed. Thanks very much. Okay, and 5.4 staff report 26-2020. That's the CAO's report on the COVID-19 actions to date so far. Matthew, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So just recapping, provincial orders under declaration of emergency have been extended to May 12th. At this point, we don't have a clear understanding of what will happen at May 12th. The province has been very clear that they'll want to see a substantial decrease in the number of new cases on a daily basis before restrictions will be lifted. Also, restrictions will be lifted in a phased approach. So it's not a big bang that next day everything is back to the way it was, but it'll take some time, and parts of the economy and restrictions will be lifted on an ongoing basis and reevaluated as they're lifted. The federal government, as we previously talked about, is all returning individuals to Canada from outside Canada will be required to self-isolate, and whether there's symptoms or not. Then on April 6th, Transport Canada enacted new measures for ferries and commercial passenger vessels that all non-essential activity is to cease until at least June 30th. So that gave us a bit of an understanding. Those that are considered essential have to implement either social distancing or physical distancing or an alternative practice following Health Canada guidelines. From a town of Prescott perspective, we continue to meet on a weekly basis for the emergency control group. All indoor and outdoor facilities remain closed to the public. We have installed signage following our last meeting that was put in place in 2 additional locations. The closure signage at all outdoor facilities has been there and continues to be monitored to make sure that they're remaining there, as well as our town bylaw officers do daily and routine checks 7 days a week on all of the outdoor areas, as well as making sure that provincial orders are being followed in not just town facilities, but all around town. Social media channels have really certainly picked up from the town's perspective to share information, make sure that there's information out there. Dedicated part of our website is for COVID-19, both from a resident perspective as well as a business perspective. So when we take a look at facilities and events, as I mentioned, all indoor facilities were closed as of March 16th, and then all outdoor facilities were closed effective March 31st by provincial order. So when we take a look at what's been canceled, really the things that have occurred since our last meeting was the Eastern Ontario Firefighters Association competition for June 19th to 21st has been canceled for this year. The St. Lawrence Cruise Line dockings have been canceled until at least July 2nd at the earliest. The Communities in Bloom, the national judging, they've decided to cancel it for this year, as well as the what we want to discuss today is the bicycle passenger ferry pilot project, which we were working towards a July and August timeframe. It really, at this point, should probably be canceled. I have communicated that to the city manager in Ogdensburg, and they concur with that, given everything that's going on right now, as well as the unknowns that we have. Also, to that point, the borders do remain closed, and as of I believe last week, will remain closed for another 30 days, which puts us well into May at that point. In terms of some of the activities that are continuing, yard waste pickup is scheduled for next week. Emergency Preparedness Week for May 4th to 8th. This certainly has been a year for emergency preparedness, and so we'll be outlining some messaging there, but we'll be doing it only through media channels, radio, print, and online. Large item pickup is also scheduled for May 11th to 13th, and we're starting to take registrations on that and moving that forward. Some of the events and timings that are fast approaching that council may consider. Marina opening is currently scheduled for May 18th, which coincides with Victoria Day. Centennial Pool opening June 1st. Prescott Pool Community Pool Party June 26th, as well as the Canada Day fireworks on July 1st. So those are certainly some of the items that we currently see that are on the docket. And I think I've covered off everything for April, May, and June in terms of what had been scheduled and what's been canceled. On top of that, all of our regular programming in terms of pickleball, daily walking club, things like that have been canceled as well. And so that was done back in March 16th when those indoor facilities were closed to the public. Moving from there, so departmental activities, I outline exactly what each of the departments have been working on and focusing on, and certainly more than happy to answer any questions that there might be for that. The financial impact we already covered in a previous report, and then more than happy to, as I mentioned, answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks very much, Matthew. Just to really focus on the one real easy one first, on the ferry. I'm assuming everyone's good with that. That's obviously, it really can't happen this summer, so that'll be postponed at least to 2021. We're not spending any money on it right now at all, because obviously with the border issues and everything else right now, it's probably quite questionable whether that's ever going to go ahead, just based on the issues we've had to date, and now we've got these continuing border issues now with regards to COVID-19. So everyone good with that to cancel that for this summer. Not seeing anyone opposing. So I guess, yeah, we'll just go around the table again with this and focus on some of the events and so on. And if anyone has any questions on department activities, please ask them at this time as well. So start off with Councilor Burton, please.
Thank you. Are we going to get the pool ready, go through those motions? I mean, Matthew and I talked last week and about doing the little things around town and making sure that we accomplish what we can at this time, and be ready when and if, you know, the restrictions are lifted. So Matthew, if you could comment on that.
Sure, absolutely. So a number of councillors have brought that up, and so starting next week, we will be splitting our operations group into 2 separate buildings, and we'll be running at full capacity. That way we can keep them separate and maintain safety. We will be tackling small projects that sometimes when we're running as quickly as we are and implementing as many things as we do, sometimes we don't have time for. So certainly more than happy for councillors to send those thoughts and ideas in, and so that we can schedule those and tackle them. So really that's what we've been focusing on. In terms of the pool, I'd have to confer with staff a little bit on that. Really, it comes down to timing. So if we're going to open, you know, depending on how many days that we're leading up to opening, then you want to stabilize the pool, get it ready, things like that. But at the same time, you don't necessarily want to spend, if we're not going to be opening it for 6 more weeks, spend the money on the filtration and whatnot needlessly. So those are just a gentle balance that we would absolutely move forward with, but really depends on what the social restrictions allow for at that time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Councilor Burton, anything further?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jansman, please.
Matthew, can I just get clarification of when the 2 crews are going to, one at the rink and one at the operations building? Is that
that will start as of Monday.
Okay. And I liked the previous conversation about various projects, be it small or whatever, as long as they can do social distancing. I think it's a good opportunity to keep the employees busy. There's nothing worse than not being busy. Yeah, so I'm happy to hear that. And I wanted to do a shout out, if you will, to the Walker House. Sue has been great in engaging her market, her residents through social media, and even her article in the Prescott, oh, sorry, South Glenville Journal last week about how can I help headline. I thought that was just, you know, very well done. So I look forward to when our library is as engaging, and our it's tough with our rec department if we don't know our future, but I even saw, I happened to see Augusta Township had an engagement of, you know, encouraging residents to do a coloring page, that kind of thing. So I think everything we can do to engage the community at this time is what is expected of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jansman. Councillor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I echo Teresa's comments in regards to what Susan's doing down at Walker House. If you haven't heard from her on your computer, it's probably because you don't have a computer. But she is working on a process now where you can access a variety of programs by phone, and that will be up and running very, very short. So even if you don't have a computer, I know some of our seniors accessing the computer at the library when they don't have a computer for programs, you'll be able to do it by your phone very, very shortly. So that'll bring a lot more people back into the fold, so to speak. And it doesn't really matter whether you're a member of Walker House at this time or not. You are encouraged to participate. As far as what's going on around town, I think the guys are doing a decent job of staying apart and still getting things done. The sidewalk sweeping this year is as good as I've ever seen it. They're taking more time, especially slanted sidewalks, to get rid of the winter debris. They could do a little better coordination. I think they could do a little better coordination between the sidewalk and the street, though. It seems sidewalk swept off, and then you have a lot of dirt on the street, as we have it in front of the town hall, before it eventually gets picked up. So if we could have a little more attention there, I think it would be good. But other than that, I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McConnell. Councillor Ostrander, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to go back to what Councillor Burton said about the pool and the waterfront sort of there. If we could get something going there, it would be nice, because I think our school kids not only not going to school, but they're also going to start missing their outdoor activities if they haven't soon. So it would be nice if we could get maybe even a partial on that of some kind. Again, it's wishful thinking, I know, and we have to march to the tune. So, but anyway, staff is working very diligently. I'm part of the emergency management group with Your Worship and Matthew and Sean, and keeping a close eye on sort of the legalities of this is not a bad. We're not doing a bad job on that, but of course there's always a few corners that push the buttons and see if we're really serious about it or not. And I think we've pushed back to the point where we have shown that we're not going to cave in on any of this. So anyway, that's my final thoughts, I guess, of the day. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Ostrander. Councillor Shankar, please.
Thank you. I think we're doing everything we can, and I give kudos and credit to town staff and all the operations guys that are working and trying to diligently get things done in the town. So I think everything's been going well. I know we had that lot of debate over picking up the trash and picking up the leaves, but I don't see much discussion about that of late. So I think we're doing everything we can, and let's hope for a quick resolution to this COVID-19. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young.
No questions. All my questions and concerns have been answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else have anything else to weigh in on there? Just two quick comments myself, just on the ops crew. It's great. We're all on the same page with that. I talked to Matthew quite a bit about just trying to be as ready as possible and to make sure the town is spick and span. We've talked about starting the community, the painting, which obviously needs to be done every year. Line painting is another thing that we have to look at in the next little bit as well. It's almost time for that. Cleaning up after some of those vandalism issues. I'll note also Chuck Street's mural across from the lighthouse down on Water Street. I'm not sure if that's vandalism or it's just sort of decayed, but the lettering is off that now. And I talked to Matthew about looking at some restoration work there. So when we do open up this spring, summer, and hopefully we do have some sort of summer at some point, we are all ready to go. I just will note on the other thing, on some of the events and the activities, I don't think we can make final decisions in terms of, I mean, Marina opening, we'll have a meeting of council before that May 18th deadline, unless there's an absolute decision that needs to be made there now. I think it's probably pretty safe to say we will not be opening the Marina on May 18th, but I think we need to kind of leave that open now and have that discussion where we see sort of where the province is at with regulations and guidance there. Same with the pool party, and even same with Canada Day fireworks. But I would be surprised if these events go ahead at the times they are, especially like even Canada Day, because that would, where we're not Ottawa, we still bring generally thousands of people to our waterfront for that. So that's going to be problematic, especially if it's a staged opening. And I will say also that where the province can obviously shut us down, the province doesn't mandate the openings either. They're not going to tell us that we have to open the pool, that we have to have fireworks and so forth. That's going to be a decision made internally as well, based on our own, how we look at health and safety and so on. Obviously, we all want to reopen and get back to some semblance of normalcy as much as possible, but they're going to have to be decisions made locally here as well on the safety of some of these items. So just so we're aware of, we're going to have a lot more to talk about here as we move forward, and hopefully, but when we get into May, we'll really have some things to seriously look at. Matthew, is there anything we absolutely need decisions on today with regards to events, activities, cancellations, whatever? Because you did note the 4 that are fast approaching and require consideration, but I'm not so sure we can really give a hard, fast yay or nay to any of them yet.
No, I think the only one, certainly the Marina Centennial Pool party, would be very much based on the guidelines of the province. I quite liked the idea earlier. I think somebody mentioned about celebrating when this does pass, and so maybe we take the fireworks budget that we would have done for Canada Day and hold it for that. So that would kind of be nothing has to be passed today. These are just definitely things that are on the radar and are quickly approaching faster than we would like.
Yeah, if we had to roll a few things again, because we kind of we're going to miss a lot of holidays here from St. Patrick's Day to Canada Day. I'm reasonably sure. So if we roll everything in and have some great big bash at some point to just kind of thank the community for weathering this, and hopefully we'll be able to celebrate at some point in the not too distant future. But I think we're kind of, is everyone okay with that? We'll leave that open for now, and we'll see where we're at our next meeting, which will be that first week in May.
I'm making something.
Sorry, somebody. Sorry, I thought I heard someone start to speak. So no further discussion on that then. The only other item I did want to ask about, and I'm not trying to beat anybody up on this, but the library specific Facebook page is being created. Has that been created yet? Because it would be nice to see a little more library activity, and not to be critical, but I haven't seen that. And we talked about creating that Facebook page probably 2 meetings ago. I just, does anyone have any update on that? Lee, you're on the board, and with Kimberly's got her hand up. Any comment on that, where we're at with the library?
Quite frankly, I haven't heard anything about it at all. I would like to see more activity there, as would you. Kimberly, did you have some knowledge that I'm not aware of yet?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, Lindsay and myself have recently been in touch with Jane, the chief librarian, this week. So we're going to work with Jane and help her get a Facebook page started. We've actually created it. Now we're just developing some content now, and you'll start seeing some posts later this week, early next week. So we're going to help Jane with that.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ms. Castleman. Anything further from anyone on this report? Who's got the music going?
We have a fancy clock.
Okay, so that was for information only under 5.4. So we're through that. Matthew, you're good with all that? No other decisions that need to be made before we go into the closed session?
I'm comfortable with that. Did you want to speak just briefly, because of how the live stream works and whatnot, we probably won't be back live, but speak to timing of next meeting and that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah, we were looking at, I was discussing this with Matthew the other day. We should probably go back to the Mondays at 6. I would strongly suggest we maintain the 2 council meetings right now, because I don't even know how we would, like, I don't know what the point of committee would be right now, simply because this way we can just act on items, and there's not a lot that we really need to review at committee and then take to council. So I would stick to the 2 council meetings, but is everyone okay with going back to the Mondays? So that next meeting would be, what is that, like the 3rd, 4th of May, 4th of May?
Yeah, so if we could go back to 1st and 3rd, which was our natural meeting time, skip the 4th, and then just keep it 1st and 3rd for the foreseeable future. Then that puts us at the 14th and the 18th in May, and then first one in June would be June 1st.
14th.
That'd be the 11th and the 25th.
No, I thought it was May 4th, Matthew. You said I think you
Did
missed.
you want to go 4 and 11?
Sorry, I meant May 4th and the May 18th.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. So so that actually, the only thing about that is we could know more about provincial decisions right around the 12th. So we might want to schedule something towards the end of that week if we're going to look at preparing for marina openings or anything. Like, chances are we'll know before that week before. But I'm just wondering if we might have to move up that meeting on the 18th. But right now we could schedule for that and then just see where we're at, because I wouldn't want to have it just that week in the middle. Could be a lot of there could be a lot coming out of the province that week, like between the 5th and say the 15th. I would guess we'll have announcements about the staggered openings and such in there, unless there are some real retrenchments compared to what they talked about today. That you look confused, Matthew. I didn't think that was that.
No, I'm fine with that. I think from my perspective, whatever comes out on or around the 12th, we would follow at that point. So definitely we would share that, but I'm not sure necessarily any decision would have to be made immediately that pertains to that. So
yeah, mostly looking at the marina and some of those summer events, getting work going on the splash pad, and just I'd hate to miss a solid week there if there are things we can act on. So I'll just reserve the right, just so everyone knows, to call a special council meeting a little earlier if necessary, depending on where we're at there. Just so I think there could be some things that could help us. There could be some time sensitive things, or maybe not. I don't know, but I just throw it out there just in case. So, but barring that, so we'd be the 4th and the 18th for next month, 6 o'clock usual time on Monday.
So it might actually be the 19th of May because we
Day.
have Victoria Day on the 18th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So 4th and 19th for our next meetings.
Mhm.
So with that, anyone, and no one has any other comments. Councilor Young, did you have something?
I just wondered, perhaps you've already done this, but considering the events in Nova Scotia, do you think you could send a letter to the mayor of Portapique? Just expressing our condolences and,
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I did talk to Matthew on Sunday evening about putting the flag, lowering the flag to half mast, and I see another councilor followed it up with that, and it has been lowered after those tragic circumstances. So yeah, absolutely. If we could work on preparing something, we'll send that out in the next day or so. Kimberly, please.
Yep.
Thanks for that, Ray. Anything else? Seeing nothing else, we will move to item 6. We have a couple items on the closed session. On the purchase and sale matters under 6.1 and 6.2, an identifiable individual. So the recommendations that council move into closed session at 7:04 p.m. to address matters pertaining to 6.1 purchase and sale matters. That's under section 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act 2001, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and 6.2 identifiable individual under section 239(2)(b) of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and that the CAO, treasurer, clerk, and deputy clerk remain in the electronic meeting. Could I have a motion, please, to that effect? Moved by Councilor Young, seconded by Councilor McConnell. Mike, any discussion? So all those in favor? A motion is carried. So we will say goodbye to everyone on the live stream now and move into the in-camera portion of the meeting.